Well, hello and welcome to another week's analysis behind the news. Since it was the Democratic National Convention last week, the news was 24/7 filled with all the pomp, circumstance, and the drama that comes along with the Queen's coronation. Of course, leading up to this was the release of emails written by the staff of the Democratic National Committee. The emails revealed two things: that the DNC purposely favored Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders, and that certain staff were either bigoted or very insensitive toward potential voters. When the DNC opened, they immediately apologized for favoring Clinton, but have not apologized for the moral deficiencies of staff. As of this morning, Clinton deflected any criticism and deliberately changed the focus of the questions from the content of the emails to how those emails were obtained. And in so doing, she managed to make a reference to her main challenger on the other side of the political aisle. Yet, aren't liberal leaders quick to denounce the other side of the aisle when bigotry or perceived bigotry is revealed? Or perhaps they have cried wolf too many times, that they have convinced themselves and the media that they can do no wrong. Our guess is that WikiLeaks didn't get the emails from Russia, though it is entirely possible. Rather, the emails were probably from an inside source. According to VCY's Crosstalk program, Clinton made the promise that abortion will be made a human right if she is elected. Now let's think about that for a minute. Here we have a country that has allowed for the killing of millions of unborn babies for decades. The immorality one has to have to accept or endorse this is absolutely frightening. And Clinton and her strident supporters want to make this a right. They strip the most vulnerable of our society from the chance at life just as easily as they strip self-defense from average Americans through gun control. They easily dismiss the very foundation that life is an unalienable right bestowed upon us by God. This self-evident truth is not so self-evident anymore, is it? And if life can be demeaned to the point of taking it away from the most vulnerable, then where are we as a country heading? To offer a clue as to this direction, let's visit an article written by Alex Newman of the New American. The headline is, "Obama touts UN agenda as solution to terror." He starts off, "Because this particular terrorist used a truck instead of a firearm to murder close to 100 victims, Obama's standard propaganda pushing more gun control was obviously inappropriate for the occasion. So on July 15th, responding to the terror attack in Nice, France, Obama pushed a different but related agenda, instead arguing that the solution to terrorism, violence, and other problems is actually globalism. If you disagree with his radical prescription, Obama suggested that you are with the terrorists." Specifically, Obama told a roomful of ambassadors that the world needed more global institutions to promote common humanity and fight against people's impulses to remain loyal to their tribes, nations, and religions ahead of the globalist mechanisms being imposed on them. As part of the push for what top administration officials call the New World Order, Obama also touted the United Nations Agenda 2030 and his deals with communist dictatorships. The controversial remarks came just 2 weeks after Obama, standing alongside fellow North American leaders, warned yet again that the international order was here to stay. We become desensitized when our morals have fallen so low that we no longer hold life as cherished or a gift from God. And what President Obama has craftily done is to get average Americans desensitized to our pride in country or patriotism. He and others of his ilk are blatantly pushing globalist rhetoric to get us to give up our country in favor of ushering in a new level of humanity that sees no God, no religion, and ultimately no nations. Robert Welch, founder of the John Birch Society, predicted that state borders would become as meaningless as county borders are within a state now. Let's take that a step further and suggest that globalists would ensure that this philosophy would extend to country borders too. And if there are no borders, nations cease to exist as sovereign bodies. Does this mean that government would go away then too? Actually, the opposite would occur. Government would no longer be accountable. Rather, it would be much more dictatorial as it strives to follow the commands of the central government emanating from some branch of a world government. Think that's too much of a stretch? Let me read to you some headlines that depict the drive of the UN. These include UN Agenda 2030, a recipe for global socialism. UN and Obama launch global war on ideologies. UN schools caught teaching Arab children to wage jihad on Jews. UN demands robust gun control after Orlando terror. UN demands bigger, stronger UN police force. UN approves Obama-sponsored terrorism regime. Obama plots huge boost to UN military amid child rape scandals. And UN-backed forces slaughter Christians in Ivory Coast. Now, these read like they're not a membership organization, rather an agenda and a framework for global government. And while we've picked on the liberals in this instance, let us not forget that many conservatives are also on board with this globalist plan. Current GOP leaders have long ago left their limited government principles in favor of throwing this country further in debt, creating an inflaming anti-American sentiment around the globe, and robbing this and future generations of Americans their liberty, all in the name of security. False security, I might add. And where is the media in all of this? They are currently caught up in political theater following the antics of the leading candidates for president. They're playing the narrative that demonstrates the president is the most important position in the American system. Now, this is completely wrong, and even a brief study of the Constitution and branches of government would show that we, the people, hold the most important position. It's us that hold politicians accountable every 2 years, 4 years, or 6 years. It's us that hold the government in check. Each politician is a representative of the constituents that got him there. You don't like who's there or the votes they cast? Try exercising some accountability. Speaking of which, here in Wisconsin, we have a primary that will be held next week. It has nothing to do with the presidential election, but it has everything to do with those who are elected for local government. If you know the presidential candidates and their latest rhetoric, but you can't name more than 1 or 2 of those running for local office, then that indicates you need to shift your priorities and spend some additional time understanding who will be representing your local electorate. As we push at JBS, it's the educated electorate that makes all the difference in getting in folks that will obey their oath of office. Our approach is much, much more than just voting in the right people. It's about educating other voters on key issues, organizing them, and taking back the republic. To become involved today, I invite you to join the John Birch Society. Until next week, we'll see you then.